Hello, friends. Let us start with a prayer. As usual, of course. Peace, peace everywhere. For those of you who may like to share these slides or see these slides again, or even use these slides for your lectures, the presentation is already on my website, www.drpankajdesai.com, in my recent lectures section. So you can go there and use the slides wherever you want to use without even acknowledging me, no problem. The topic which we are going to discuss today is really making we obstetricians in particular and the entire medical world or the entire world wonder what is happening. And that topic is obesity in general. And today we are going to discuss obesity in pregnancy. I can assure you that this is a little future ready sort of lecture. It will make you future ready because some of you may not be seeing obesity cases so frequently as yet. But people like me who are in private practice are now really seized of this matter. I got very sensitive to this matter nearly 1.5 to 2 years before, when at one stage I counted that I have 11 obese subjects who are pregnant in different stages of pregnancy and who are registered with me for antenatal care and subsequently confinement. Up till now, by and large, for an obstetrician, the maximum attention was drawn to IVF pregnancies for obvious reasons. And I counted that vis-a-vis 11 obese pregnant mothers, at that very moment, IVF pregnancies were only 8 registered with me at that moment for confinement. So obesity is really becoming a big problem. And I got deeply involved in this when 2 subjects, one of 123 kilograms in weight and the other 128 kilograms in weight, registered with me in short succession. Interestingly, that 128 kilogram weight was coming for treatment of infertility. We treated her and she conceived. So this topic, obesity in pregnancy, may probably not be of so much serious concern to some of you who are maybe practicing in challenged areas, but most of us are going to face this problem or are already facing this problem. You'll be surprised to know that in India today, there are more overnourished individuals than undernourished. This is applicable even to most parts of the world. And that brings me to share with you some scary numbers. This recording is actually a re-recording of a lecture which I have given yesterday in a conference. And that is where, when I shared these scary numbers, I could see in the audience, their eyebrows lifting in surprise. The probability of conception declines linearly starting from a BMI of 29 kilogram per square meters, 30 is obese, 29 kilogram per square meters by 4%, for each additional only 1 kilogram per square meter of BMI. Some people consider 29 itself is obese, and therefore, as soon as you touch obesity, your fertility has a precipitous decline. There is a 10% increase of pre-gravid BMI, which increases the relative risk of gestational diabetes and that of preeclampsia by approximately 10%, and a mere 5 kilogram per square meter increase of BMI, irrespective of where it started, will elevate the risk of intrauterine death to 1.24 if 1 is the base. So by a quarter point, it increases. So that brings us to the maternal risks. And what are the maternal risks? They are also quite interesting. Maternal obesity is associated with an increased risk of miscarriage by 3 times. Operative delivery, 1.5 times in the obese. And the morbidly obese group, with those 128 or 125 and all which I was telling you, by 2.5 times. So once you have an obese subject, be prepared for operative intervention. This is likely to be more in them. One Australian study of more than 10,000 pregnancies showed that the odds of developing gestational diabetes were 3 times higher in obese compared with the normal weight subjects. Other risks included a risk of preeclampsia increasing by 4 times, not by increase by 4%, 400% in the obese, and thromboembolism by 2.5 times. There are problems, respiratory problems. Obstructive sleep apnea can cause fatigue, increased risk of hypertension, heart and lung problems in nearly all subjects, not necessarily pregnant. But respiratory diseases, asthma and obstructive sleep apnea increases the risk of non-pulmonary pregnancy complications such as cesarean section and preeclampsia. Just because she is obese, she is likely to develop these, and this will be the consequence. It touches all systems. Let us see the cardiovascular system. Pre-pregnancy obesity was associated with an increased risk of peripartum cardiomyopathy, a complication which every obstetrician is morbidly scared of. Can lead to a very high mortality. And 57% of maternal deaths from venous thromboembolism in the UK are in the obese subjects. I will not be going into the thromboprophylaxis in the obese subjects for venous thromboembolism or against venous thromboembolism, because it itself is a big lecture. But we all know in a summary that for thromboprophylaxis, early ambulation is the key, which is going to be difficult in obese subjects. And doses of low molecular weight heparin are based essentially on weight of the subject. And the use of standard dosing is 0.75 to 1 milligram per kilogram every 12 hours based on actual body weight, till the patient is completely ambulatory or up to 3 months of pregnancy. Let us see the fetal effects. A role for early life environmental exposure is critical in determining the long-term health of an individual, which has led now to science to formulate the developmental origins of health and diseases, the so-called Doe-Haig theory. Maternal obesity and diabetes during pregnancy are strongly associated with altered fetal growth and development, as well as lifelong worries of metabolic tissue disorders. So In pregnancy, if your mother was obese and you were in the uterus, just because she was obese and you were in the uterus at that time, you are going to have lots of problems when you come out and you start living an independent life. Let us see this very nice and explicit diagram. Pre-pregnancy obesity increases the chance of diabetes in pregnancy, I showed you. Produces larger and fatter babies, leads to childhood obesity and insulin resistance when born, perpetuates as adult obesity and insulin resistance. So because your mother was obese when you were in the womb, you are likely to develop obesity later, very much later in life. Therefore, the wrong conception, or therefore the concept that a chubby child, in Indian society we see this, a chubby child is what every parent wants. They don't like thin and lean child. That is, once again, one more wrong concept in the society. And pre-pregnancy weight loss will work probably at this stage. Now I'm going to share with you something which may surprise many of you, though it didn't surprise me. And what is that surprise? The misuse of antibiotics. Very recent paper shows that the misuse of antibiotics during pregnancy is positively correlated with a risk of obesity in 5-year-old children. So because the doctor attending your mother misused the antibiotics, or the mother was keen on it and the doctor successfully got manipulated to use it, you are obese today at 5 years of age. This condition, we all can identify from the picture, metabolic syndrome, is a long-term effect, a long-term implication. Intrauterine exposure to obesity is associated with increased risk of developing obesity and metabolic disorders in childhood. We have seen it. And the Barker hypothesis, we knew it since 1990, is responsible for this. I'm not going into the details of it, but these interesting statistics I would like to share with you. In 50% of large for gestational age offsprings of mothers with gestational diabetes, and just half, 29%, still quite high, of all LGA offsprings of non-diabetic mothers will have metabolic syndrome at any stage of life, a very high risk, or up to 11 years. That means not only the fetus, but the baby, even the newborn, and subsequently are sick babies of pregnant obese mothers. Parental mortality is 4 times more. Macrosomia double. 11% of neonatal deaths can be attributed to maternal overweight and obesity. During pregnancy, overweight women are at an increased risk of congenital birth defects like neural tube defects, heart defects, and gastrointestinal malformations. Why this happens? Though exactly not identified, but much has been known, for which we will have to go deep. And let us go deep in the pathophysiology of this. What happens is that we all know that we have been taught since our undergraduate days that pregnancy is a diabetogenic state. So normal pregnancy is associated with increased insulin resistance, so a woman has a tendency to develop diabetes. But all subjects actually do not manifest a clinically obvious diabetes, because in a pregnant subject, their pancreas have an increased beta cell mass. Not only does the mass of beta cell in the islet of Langerhans increases, but this beta cell mass also becomes more competent. As a result of that, the insulin amount is increased effectively and the woman doesn't develop most of the times clinical diabetes. However, if there is obesity during pregnancy, there is a pro-inflammatory environment which is generated, which disrupts precisely this response of the pancreas, and the beta cells resulting in increased mass and competence doesn't occur efficiently enough, and the woman manifests diabetes. There is one more very important pathophysiology involved, and that is the epigenetics. What is epigenetics? Let us understand this. Epigenetics is the study of how your behaviors and environment can cause changes that affect the way your genes work. Normally, you work as your genes make you work. By you, I mean your entire body system. But here, the genes work as per your behavior and environment. Unlike genetic changes, epigenetic changes are reversible and do not change your DNA sequence, but they can change how your body reads the DNA sequence. Now that is where the catch comes. So it is not permanent, but it is profound. A mounting body of evidence implicates epigenetic mechanisms in the regulation of these effects. And it doesn't stop there. Their transmission even to future generations. So epigenetics doesn't confine only to that environment or to that person. Even how it gets transmitted in future generations without affecting your DNA sequence is where epigenetics stretches itself. So this habit will not change your DNA sequence, but it will definitely alter, because of epigenetics, how your signals are read, and that causes its effects. And it has been found in a very large way in the Japanese society. We all know the Japanese have the longest lifespan and a healthy lifespan throughout the world. And it has been found that by and large, Japanese are lean and thin people, as you can see here. These are typical Japanese women. But over a period of time, what has been found, that the young Japanese are migrating to more affluent strata and migrating more to urban areas. As a result of this, their habits, eating habits are changing. They are eating more so-called fast foods, and lifestyles are becoming sedentary. As a result of that, their DNA sequence has not changed, but obesity and reduction in longevity has become a reality amongst many Japanese people. So much so that the Guardian carried an article on this sometimes back. Now, so we have identified in the first half of the lecture, or first 3/4 of the lecture, the profundity of the problem and why this occurs. Can we help? Yes, we can. Right now, because we don't know exactly what causes obesity, our help will be limited, but we can. And one thing to watch is weight gain during pregnancy. Excessive weight gain in pregnancy leads to very high risk of complications, which I have mentioned, plus failed labor induction, infants with hypoglycemia and LGA. However, those obese women who gain less weight, not the traditional 10 kg and beyond, they have a reduced risk. Though still obese, this group had a reduced risk, though comparatively more than non-obese subjects, reduced risk of preeclampsia, cesarean section, instrumental delivery, and LGA babies. So even if you can control the weight, and this is where the composite weight gain counts, though it is an imprecise estimate of increasing maternal or fetal adiposity, the total weight gain, or the composite weight gain is what is calculated. And the latest recommendations suggest that the obese pregnant women should not gain weight more than 9 kg during the entire pregnancy period. The more it remains towards 5, the better it is. So weight loss is by and large discouraged. However, observational studies indicate, and therefore, if you are handling obese pregnant subjects, don't be alarmed, because those women who are heavier will actually lose weight during pregnancy. This is a normal compensatory phenomena probably. It will be found. So don't be alarmed. In the interval period between the 2 pregnancies, if the subject loses weight, then she has got lots of advantages. She reduces a risk of hypertensive complications in her stillbirths and macrosomia. Even weight loss in interval period will increase the chance of successful vaginal birth after cesarean section. So the question which comes down to, in your mind, will be, can we allow exercises in pregnancy? And this is where I'm going to shatter the myth on basis of data. Because by and large, exercises in pregnancy have been very protective and conservative sort of. I know quite a few obstetricians who play safe and tell that you can do exercises. The best exercises is walking. You go for a walk till you are not tired. But latest study has shown something different. It has been found, a 2001 April study has shown, the recent meta-analysis of over 2,000 women showed that even aerobic exercises of up to moderate intensity, both strength and toning, performed 3 to 4 days a week throughout the pregnancy for a session of around half an hour to maximum 45 minutes, was not associated with any increased risk of making the pregnancy high risk because she performed an exercise. So therefore, exercise is safe during pregnancy and women must be encouraged. And I'm sure our physiotherapist friends or healthcare personnel who are handling this matter would now be getting better equipped with this information at hand. Even the previously sedentary patients who were not exercising before pregnancy, by and large were told not to now start new. They can start an exercise program. And also in some high-risk pregnancies where we were telling no, don't exercise, as those with chronic hypertension and gestational diabetes, it is safe to exercise. So please digest this new information which I have given. Exercises also in pregnancy are to be encouraged. What about labor? Elective induction is propagated in case of morbid obese and may entail less risk than allowing the pregnancy to progress after 41. After 41 is a big no. Even now data is pouring in where 39 weeks is the cutout. But when you are handling this labor, be prepared. Labor progression from 4 to 10 centimeters will be slower in obese subjects. And this data suggests that obesity is associated with inefficient uterine activity. And why so, I will be telling you. And this is also responsible for higher frequency of cesarean section in obese subjects because there is an altered myometrial function. And one cause has been found that this receptor, connexin 43, it is a lower function oxytocin receptor. Friends, understand this. Just because oxytocin has arrived, whatever way, intrinsic or you have given, it will not have the authority and power to generate the uterine activity, the myometrial activity. It will require receptors. And nearly 7 receptor types have already been identified, of which connexin 43 has been very clearly identified. It is a lower function receptor though, and its concentration is surely less. A side word, oxytocin receptors are nearly absent early in pregnancy, and as pregnancy advances, the number and the amount of receptors increase. Therefore, you are giving tocolytics in early pregnancy. I always am not supporting it because it is not only unscientific, it is irrational. There are no receptors there. But our late in pregnancy in obese subjects, the concentration of receptors is low, and therefore myometrial activity is weak. Therefore, be prepared for this. There is increased requirement in anesthesia, high risk, increased requirement of drugs, increased risk of aspiration, difficult endotracheal intubation, difficulty in achieving regional anesthesia, postoperative high risk of hypoxemia and atelectasis, and comorbidities will worsen it all the more and precipitate an ischemic heart disease. There are some other miscellaneous type. BMI more than 40 kilogram per square meter is a risk for developing pressure sores, and I have seen at some places that I was called to give an opinion in obese subjects, pressure sores. It's a reality. Mental health problems are higher. We now will touch, before we finish, some new and current areas. And first which comes up is, and the question which I am asked is, what about bariatric surgery? Bariatric surgery helps in pregnancy. Means not done in pregnancy, but if a subject with bariatric surgery who has undergone will have less maternal and perinatal complications. And a 2018 study shows and has recommended that a minimum waiting period of 12 to 18 months should be there after bariatric surgery and before attempting a pregnancy. So that interval period, please, has to be respected. But what about anti-obesity drugs? Anti-obesity drugs are not recommended, are a big no, and that it do not improve pregnancy or birth outcome. And not only that, some of them are still not proved to be safe. So friends, to sum up this nearly half an hour lecture, currently the condition of the obstetrician is like this. He is trying to tackle obesity with all his might. But currently obesity is winning, and it is just laughing away, making the obstetrician and the obese subject cry like this. But obstetricians are now very alert, like this. See these children. They were unable to push out the master, but now they are watching very carefully. We are watching the developments in science and infusing developments in science and studying as to how we can help these subjects. I am sure in times to follow, we will be able to master this challenge, and then we will be able to dance with the master. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much.